Going back to today's topic, as you know, please leave me if you do have any questions regarding utilities that you would like me to mention. Do leave them on the question box and I will come back to them as soon as I finished giving my standard tips and advice. And I'm very curious to see what else you come up with, because I just going to talk about the basics, so electricity, water, gas, and internet and phones. And if you do have anything else that you would like me to talk about, I would love to hear it. So leave it on the message box. Also, if you end up seeing this offline after I finish, don't be afraid of leaving comments anyway. We'll still going to come back to you. So, first thing, what do you do when you are, let's start with the renting scenario. So, when you are renting, you can either have the utilities on your name or leave it on the landlord name. And both things are practiced here in Portugal. If it is holiday rental, a property licensed as holiday rental, then the utilities are mandatorily included on the contract. That's by law. If you are doing a normal long-term rental contract, it can go both ways, but when it's long-term, it's more common that the landlord asks that the utilities are put in the tenant's name. In order to do this, you just have to have the contract, and you go to the services, or you send an email to the services. In the services, there are a few providers. You have EDP for electricity, and there's also a Spanish company that I cannot for the life of me remember of the name. But there's like 2 or 3 electricity providers, but EDP is kind of the imperium here. They kind of have the monopoly, and most people use them. And for the water, you usually have to go for the local town hall water. So in Porto it's Águas do Porto, in Aveiro it's Águas de Aveiro, in Portimão it's Águas de Portimão, and so on and so forth. So you will contact these companies, and they, with your rental contract, saying that you need to exchange the utilities into your name, and you need to submit this rental contract and the proof of your ID. And usually this gets processed within a week or so. However, Portuguese services can be very, very frustrating. So sometimes you know, things get lost, emails don't get replied, and you kind of need to be on top of them. So that also happens from time to time, and it can be very frustrating, and it's very Portuguese. So if you are moving to Portugal, please be prepared of dealing with this kind of thing, especially in public services. When it comes to the gas, it's often attached to the electricity. Most of the electricity providers also provide gas, including EDP, so it's often aggregated on the bills. Most of the apartments and houses nowadays have canned gas. So what you need to do usually is, if the gas is already, it's not yet running or hasn't been running for a while, you need to do an inspection. And that inspection has a cost. I don't remember what I paid last time I had to do it, but I think it was 100 something euros, like 120, something like that. And you need to pay this inspection fee in order to be able to turn it on. So the technician will schedule a day to go there and just verify everything is working properly. And then your gas will be turned on and your contract will be turned on. If the gas was already turned on and you just need to exchange the name on the contract, then you just need to send the email with the contract and ID information. It basically works the same way with the water company. You need to either go there or send an email with all the information. Some of these companies already have forms online to do these kind of things that you just go there and fill in. Obviously, they are mostly in Portuguese, so that can be a problem for non-Portuguese speakers. With the internet and phone service is a bit more of a broad option. Before I go into that, I would just like to give some pointers on the differences between renting and buying in this scenario. So if you're buying, you literally will have to take the purchase deed or the CCPV, so the promise contract, and do exactly the same thing. But in this case, you really do need to put it on your name or put it on the new service, connect the new service. For the water, if the water wasn't already turned on, you will have to pay a fee for the counting thing. I don't remember the name of it. Same thing goes for electricity. So if the electricity or water have been turned off, they usually take the counter off, and then you also have to pay a fee to reinstall this counter. There are two types of counters for electricity here in Portugal. You have the old counters that you have to submit the readings manually every month, and you have the new counters that supposedly do everything digitally. I have them installed in most of our houses in Porto and don't really have an issue. I didn't notice any changes in prices. But my content manager in Lisbon has been complaining a lot that since they changed, their bills have been different, so probably you should still pay attention to the values. I think this more or less covers everything when it comes to gas, electricity, and water. If you have any other questions, please do let me know. I'm very curious if I missed something. I do think this is a more or less simple process. It can be frustrating because of bureaucracy and the language barrier though, but it's a fairly simple process. It just can be frustrating if you get someone that doesn't really listen and doesn't really do the things. That's one of the things here in Portugal. You can spend hours on the phone with this kind of services. So other than that, it's pretty simple. So the next thing that most people get is the internet, TV, and so on. You have three main providers here in Portugal. You have Vodafone, Mel, and NOS. And then you have some smaller providers like Novo. And I honestly recommend you, especially if you are going to get fiber, which I definitely recommend, I recommend you to get a contract with one of the three big brands, because especially Vodafone and NOS are usually the ones that own the fiber lines. You just need to figure out who owns the fiber lines in your area, and you will probably get the best deal and the best connection if you go directly with them. Because if they don't own the fiber lines in that area, they will be basically renting it from the other company. So it's just easier to go with the owner directly. You have, here in Portugal, it can be very frustrating because if you want internet, you kind of get stuck with TV and phone too, because basically no one has packages for just internet, only Novo and just the internet routers. You have, actually I don't have it here with me, but I have one too. There is this mobile router devices that nowadays you can get a contract for like 15 per 15 days. I know that Vodafone does that. I think Mel has a similar plan. These routers, at least the Vodafone one, is unlimited. That's the one I have. And the speed is not nearly as good as the speed with fiber internet, for example. So do get them if you really need the flexibility. It's nice, it solves the problem. But if you need really good connection, do not expect it from this kind of routers. The speed is much lower than fiber internet. It's not comparable. It's comparable to a mobile phone network, for example. If you really want good connection, your best option is fiber, and if you want fiber, you're kind of stuck with a TV net voice package that most companies have, and they usually will cost you something like between 30, 40 euros to 50 euros for a household. So you get the TV with a bunch of channels, you get the landline, and you get the fiber internet. Here most of the fiber internet is 100 to 200 megabytes per second, and most of the big and medium-sized cities have fiber. You will lack fiber on smaller villages and on interior mostly. However, if the village that you are going into is located on the passage between two cities that have fiber, it will probably have internet anyway, because the fiber lines will go through that and get connected. That's what happens, for example, in my father's village. It's a pretty small village in a pretty small location, but we get great fiber because the cables that go from Aveiro to Porto and especially go through there. So we have great connection anyway. As I was saying, you are kind of stuck with packages when you want fiber. So you will have this, for the household, they will usually cost between 30 and 50 euros. And then you can also aggregate mobile phone numbers to these packages, and it usually is much cheaper. For example, I have two brothers, and I have my brothers integrated into my fiber and TV package, and I pay around 75 euros per month for 3 mobile phones, plus a bunch of TV channels that I don't even know how many I have because I don't really use it, and the landline that I also don't use, but I do get great fiber. So I basically just pay the base 40 euros probably just to get nice fiber, but I guess it's not that bad, and the rest is kind of an extra. And I think this more or less covers everything on utilities. I don't see what else I can tell you. Oh, look, Kiki. I don't see what else I can tell you about utilities. I think it's a pretty straightforward process. I don't know if it's because I'm local and it just makes things easier. If you do have any other questions about things that you need to turn on the house, please let me know. I didn't think of anything else. And this live will end up being really short because I think that's it. Wait, I have a comment here. Side note, if there's no previous service installed at home for water and light, it can take more or less 3 days for them to go there and install it. Yes, it can even take a bit longer. It will depend on the location and how busy the services are. For the gas, for example, when I installed it in my Portimão apartment, it took over a week. But yes, for the water, water and the electricity, sometimes they do it from one day to the other, but often it takes a bit longer, so it's a great side note here to take that into account, that it will probably take a few days if it's not yet connected. Okay then, so Amilda is asking, does water needs filter in Portugal? Tap water in Portugal is drinkable, however, the alkalinity of the water does vary from zone to zone. There is a map, I can try to get it on the comments later on. There is a map that tells you the pH of the canned water, piped water by area. In the Algarve, it's a very hard, what we call hard water, and I personally don't recommend to drink it daily if you are not used to this kind of highly mineralized water. In some areas, it's actually pretty great without a lot of taste. I actually don't really drink tap water because it kind of always tastes a bit like chlorine, and I really don't like that. But there is a big difference between areas. Some areas you barely notice it and it's actually pretty decent, and some other areas it just tastes horrible, but it's still drinkable everywhere. It's just the pH varies a bit. Okay then, so thank you so much everyone who's watching, and I see you all next week. I don't know what I will be talking about yet, but I will figure it out until then. So Have a great weekend. Bye.